Hello. So, today I'm going to continue with the project that I started over the weekend, which is going to be the Reddit clone. So, I'll also continue on from yesterday, where where I kind of stopped off there. Basically, I think the last part we got to was just defining the cache structure here of our sites in this case. I just expanded it on to also provide what I think the cache structure could look like for the posts as well as for the comments. So let's see what else. Yeah, and then the cache for the new and hot pages, which were, I think, things that we also already talked about previously. And then, in case we want to think about it like the personal homepage, although I'm not too particularly concerned with that at the moment. And I don't know if I had this yesterday or not, but thinking about how we can cache comments, I feel like I had that already. But yeah, I was just trying to basically get like a good understanding of, how I can cache different things to, well, I have two things. One of them is I want to have as little requests ideally to our cache as possible, so that we don't always need to go like back and forth. But at the same time, I also don't want to always be extracting massive amounts of data from the cache. I want to make sure that every time I go to the cache, I get what I need and I don't get any unnecessary information. But also, I want to think about, not having to go to the cache as often as required, or all the time. So, yeah. And then I think another thing that I started thinking about is because there was one component that I forgot, which was that actually when you're looking at a site, you already know what like post you've like upvoted or downvoted. So making sure that that is also somehow stored, so that you can keep that. And when we're upvoting or downvoting, that we properly deal with unclicking an upvote, which just kind of neutralizes it, and clicking a downvote when you're upvoted, which switches to a downvote, and vice versa. So I'm pretty sure I wrote out the cache structure somewhere for that, how I wanted to cache that, although I'm not exactly sure where it is anymore right now. I also changed the events. I didn't change the model, but I did change the way that I'm going to think about storing it. Because rather than just having like an upvote or downvote here, this is going to be a vote field, and then our event value here is either going to be up or down, depending, rather than having like null values. And the same thing here. Now, there's one more thing I think that I'm looking for, which is somewhere here. I can't remember where. I somewhere defined where I wanted to go about, like storing votes, or is it this? No. Like personalized votes, so that if you've upvoted something or not. But I can't find that right now. I'm not sure why. So, yeah. Strange. Let's see. Oh yeah, I think it was something like this. Oh, I wonder if this is... Oh, okay. Here it is. Let's see if we can reduce this font size. Yeah. All right. So yeah, I think the thought that I had was kind of caching responses for specific posts and users to know if they've upvoted or downvoted it. Again, we want to like reduce going to our database, And even if we cache, like a subsite or the homepage or something, and we know what post we need to show there, we otherwise would still be going to the database to look up if they've like upvoted or downvoted, just to kind of show that small piece of information. So we want to make sure that that information is also cached. And yeah, there were two ways that I was thinking about this. One of them is kind of doing it by post basis. The other one's doing it for a series of posts on the site. And then, yeah, similarly for the comments, we have to do a similar thing. And I think what I ultimately decided on is kind of doing it on a post-by-post basis for the posts. But for comments, I want to basically store everything because, well, it's likely that, like most of the comment thread will be visible, whereas if you're on the homepage, a lot of posts may not be visible. I think that's kind of what I decided on yesterday, but I think we'll kind of see when we get there, if that's still the way I want to go. But these are kind of like the two approaches that I was thinking about there. And in terms of cleanup, I think mainly like TTL can take care of things for us here. Just if like things are not accessed, like a post is not accessed by a user within a specific time, it gets cleaned up. And similarly, if a user isn't seeing a specific post on their newsfeed anymore or something, we can also just go ahead and clean that up, or let the TTL clean that up. Yeah, all right. So I also started a separate document where I just wanted to start writing out some of like the endpoints, as well as what I think the data models could look like. I actually just realized I forgot a pretty important thing here, which is going to be the register. So I'll get to that in a second. But yeah, the idea here is like, these are basically the different pages, also the ones that I've kind of like outlined here. Oh, yeah, over here. And so for each of these, we basically, have some schema that we need. Different endpoints, and each of these endpoints need to accept and potentially also return different things. So yeah, I think the endpoint right now is just like we have like the general login page, or the login endpoint. We have logout, we have register, we have a home page which you can access from 2 URLs, and there we can supply the filter if necessary. The infinite scrolling component, I've never had to do that, so right now I'm kind of like taking some sort of like pagination approach, but I'm definitely going to look that up at some point too and see how like infinite scrolling is dealt with also with like database requests, because I assume that even though the front end would be infinite scrolling, on the back end you would probably still be doing like paginated database requests. But again, because I'm not really focused on the front end components, I kind of hope that the front end works the way where you scroll and then more data is loaded, but the whole page obviously isn't refreshed, because that's not what happens when you use a website. Rather, the original data is maintained, and then you load more data, which can then be displayed. So hopefully we can chunk that up like that on the backend side and essentially treat it the same as if it were pagination, and basically it's the front end's problem. If it's an infinite scroll or if it's actually paginated. That's kind of how I think it works on the front end, but I don't know, I haven't looked it up, so I'm not super sure. But I'm also not going to be like really worried about that, because actually I don't even think I'm going to be implementing, maybe I'll implement like pagination, but I don't think so. Maybe, we'll see. It's not super important to me to implement that, just because again it's like a front end feature. So yeah, I don't really think there's super much like fun or learning about implementing that. It's just kind of like optimizing things. So either way, I don't think I'm going to be too worried about that. But obviously I do still kind of want to think about that it eventually has to be there. So I want to be able to support it from the backend side, even if I may not actually implement it from the front end side. obviously the number of entries in our database are also going to be low. So that means, like we won't effectively on the homepage, we won't see anything. We won't see like massive streams of posts or anything because we just won't have that in our database. And then, so this is, I think, the input. I'm also using Pydantic to define the data classes that I want to use. So this is going to be our homepage, which is going to have 2 values. It's going to have a filter, which is a string, defaults to new. It's going to have a page, which is an integer, which defaults to 0. Our response is going to be, or this is the response on a post-by-post basis. So every single post is going to carry this information, which is going to be the username of the user who posted it, title, content, the absolute number of upvotes, or like I always say absolute, I guess the difference between upvotes and downvotes, because if it's negative, we want to show it as negative, but like absolute, I mean like upvotes minus downvotes. When it was created, and if the user upvoted the post or not. And this will default, or this is optional, so we don't need this, and if it's missing or null, then this will mean null, but if it's true, it will mean they upvoted it, and if it's false, it will mean they downvoted it. And then also like when you actually go to the site, so as in like the homepage, what you're going to get is you're going to get 2 items. The first one is going to be the order. So it's going to be a list of integers, which is the order that posts should appear in. And then we're also going to get a second item, which is going to be the post content, which is going to be a mapping from the integers, which are the post IDs here, to these individual post response objects, so that each item, once we know the order here, or we know the order from this component, can also be displayed using the information from here. Looks like we got a bunch of loading, so I'm just gonna quit that and reload it. Okay. Still need to define the data model here in a second. For the subside, we have a similar thing. The subsides are going to be like our subreddits. So it's essentially the same thing as like the homepage, except that the content is specific to one specific site. And another thing that we want to be able to do is submit posts. So that's just going to carry information about the title and content, and the rest we can kind of infer. Posts. So for once you go into a post on a web page, on a subsite, or on the homepage, you're going to have, let's see, what was it? Post page. Do I use this anywhere else? Not sure what exactly this was. I don't remember this at the moment, so maybe I use it somewhere else, or maybe not. But it seems like we're missing stuff here. So let's see. I mean, for the post page. Oh, right. So this is the information that we're sending to this endpoint. So all we actually, I think, need here is, because we specify the post ID as well as the subsite name, so we can load all of the information we need for the post, which will be included in the response. And the only thing we need to know is what comment thread level do we need to load. Because hopefully the idea is that when a page is loaded, we will show like the first full thread, and then when a second thread is loaded, or like when you click expand on a thread, we can then show that next component. And so only what we would be doing there is like when you click like expand or view more or whatever it will be on a common thread, that we just specify what thread the user wanted to expand. And then we can get that extra data out. Because the rest of the information will actually either be contained in the endpoint itself, or also in like the request information, or in the user session. So yeah, that's kind of what we need as input. In terms of output, I called this, so this is going to be information about our comments that are going to show up. So, we're also missing information here about the post like title, which needs to be a string, and the author username, which is going to be a string, the content, which is also going to be a string, and then we have the upvote count, which is going to be an integer. So yeah, this is just to actually render the page. So we need the title, the username, the content, the upvote count, and then we have a similar thing to what we had with the page responses, or with the site responses, but this time for comment thread instead. So we have a comment order, which is going to be a mapping right now of integers to lists of integers. So the first integer is going to correspond to, and probably good if I write this out, first integer. So that we know for every parent comment what the child comments are. And that way we can actually chain together, like different hierarchies without like nesting it, because we'll just have the parent hierarchy always represented as the key, and all the children will be the value associated with it. And then the content, which is the exact same thing that we had here, is just going to, for every single comment ID, we're just going to have the information about the content. Okay. And then we have the submit comments. So we need to know like the content, obviously, as well as what thread it's submitted to make sure we get that threading correct. And title content, yeah. So this is kind of what it's like for that. And then I was just thinking about like what other endpoints are there. So we need to think about like the actual voting. So I have 2 endpoints for that, as well as what information needs to be sent downstream so that we can update the database side of it. Yeah. Yeah, so that's kind of where we're at right now. And I think I'm just going to continue just writing some of this out. So first, obviously, I need to define our model here. I think that's the only information we need right now for registering. And yeah, okay. So now I'm just going to, I'm basically just going to review everything once again. And I think these would probably be the base endpoints that we need for everything. But yeah, I'm just going to go through everything again and review it. Hopefully, like I didn't miss anything obvious. All right, so let's see. Hmm. So I think one thing that's missing, which currently I'm not super sure how to implement this because I've never done it before, is like the share stuff. But I'm gonna leave that out for now. To me, that's more of like a later thing. And I don't even know if this is implemented on like the front end or the back end side. I haven't done any research at all into this, but I assume a quick Google is probably going to answer a lot of those questions for me. So there is going to be some sort of shared component. I mean, ideally, it's probably pretty good to have. But yeah, I'm not going to be super worried about it because I don't think it's part of like the core product. It's more, like a nice thing to have to just like increase acquisition and increasing your presence and stuff like that. Okay, so the thing that is pretty important to me actually is how these Kafka pipelines sort of work, because this is kind of how a lot of our data will be dealt with. So yeah, I want to take another think about this just to make sure that I have thought this through properly. Alright, so our upvoting is definitely going to go through Kafka. I don't even think we need a separate service for this. I think we can just send this to Kafka. And the reason that I want to do it over Kafka rather than having the service interact with the database itself is because during high load, I don't want to have a bunch of like waiting requests or auto scaling to like bring up the number of services, and all they're doing is waiting for the database to unblock. If the database starts getting blocked, basically I want to be able to handle that in a queue, and during this high load period the queue may build up, but then it will also shrink again over time, and I want to kind of like separate that behavior, and I think a queue would be a nice thing to have for that. And I want Kafka because I don't want things to get dropped. I want the data to be persisted. So here we go. So these are going to be services using the APIs, kind of like we have here, or maybe it'll just be one service. Maybe this will be like the voting service. Will it be the voting service, or will it actually be just an endpoint itself, like part of the site itself? I'm not exactly sure right now. Put here voting service ? Because I don't know if it's worth having like a separate service just so that it can pass data onto Kafka. It doesn't make a lot of sense, I think, because like all that the endpoint is doing, all that it's doing is it's just sending an event into Kafka. So I don't think it will really make sense to have that be a separate service. And maybe that can be part of, maybe it's going to be like implemented as part of the post and part of the site's component. So for the posts, we'll have upvoting. I think, yeah, I think for the post, maybe this will all be part of like the post component, where the dealing with getting information about posts and comments, all of that will be handled by the posts, and also upvoting will just be an endpoint in there, and then we can just send that off to there, and we shouldn't have a separate service for that because it's like nothing. All it does is just pass on information. Okay. Yeah, so the other thing is, what happens when we submit a post and when we submit a comment? Do we want to insert that directly into the database, or do we want that to go through our pipeline? Um, So, yeah, obviously, if we, use the service directly to insert the data, we have like less points of failure, and when a post is submitted, it can be directly inserted into the database, and we have that thing there. So, the problem, obviously, that we can run